At this moment, everyone should be aware of what is happening at Unist'ot'en. We are witnessing the criminalization of indigenous sovereignty and the continued degradation of Wet'suwet'en territories. Yet, the Unist'ot'en continue to uphold their laws and livelihoods, as they have for thousands of years. Just to be clear, I do not belong to the Unist'ot'en, or even the Wet'suwet'en as a whole. I do not speak on their behalf. I'm just another person who has recognized the importance of these events and their implications for the rest of Canada. For a little context, I'll share a brief history of everything leading up to this point. The Wet'suwet'en nation is composed of 5 clans: the Gilseyu, the Big Frog clan, the Lexi'liu, the Little Frog clan, the Gidimt'en, the Wolf clan, the Leksamshu, the Fireweed clan, and the Tsayu, the Beaver clan. Within each clan are houses that independently manage their yinta, or territory, through their respective hereditary chiefs. The Unist'ot'en are a house belonging to the Gilseyu clan, or the Big Frog clan. Under Wet'suwet'en law, the hereditary chiefs are the only authority that can sanction development on Wet'suwet'en territory. On multiple occasions, all 5 clans of the Wet'suwet'en nation have rejected Coastal Gaslinc's proposed pipeline.
Can you help us understand, sir, the distinction here between the Wet'suwet'en elected band council and the hereditary chiefs of the Wet'suwet'en clans? I understand that the council is on board with the pipeline, but the chiefs oppose it.
I will try to do so in the face of a lot of confusion and misinformation that has been provided. The Wet'suwet'en operate on a traditional system with respect to their unextinguished Aboriginal title to their lands, including the lands in question here. Fast forwarding to 21 years ago in 1997, the Supreme Court of Canada recognized that system.
The court case, the Kala court case, which I am the House Chief of, and also the Nicole case. All those cases we won.
The issue for the company and for the government of British Columbia and Canada is that they need to address Aboriginal title, which has never been settled in British Columbia.
We told the world who we are, how we looked after our land, and who are the true caretakers of the land. And yet, the governments and the industry are still dancing around.
The Supreme Court of Canada made no final determination, but it did recognize that the title holding system is the hereditary chiefs. People talk about it being complicated. It is not complicated.
It is a little complicated, but this is what you need to know. In short, both Wet'suwet'en and Canadian law recognize the hereditary chiefs as the rightful decision makers on Wet'suwet'en land. Their rights and title have never been extinguished, nor surrendered through treaty. By all means, they are a sovereign people. But as for the band councils,
they deal with the question of on the reserve, water, sewage, those other issues.
At this point, you should at least know more than the guys carrying the guns.
I think my understanding of Dalgamuth, and it's a basic understanding, is that the First Nations in that territory had tenure over that particular area of land, and they've never ever relinquished control of that land.
It is pretty clear that Sergeant Rose has no idea that he's on the land he is talking about, as the Wet'suwet'en were plaintiffs in the case he is referring to.
They've always turned away outsiders. There's never been anybody permitted into that territory. So because of that long-term history and record of not permitting outsiders into that territory, the court said, true, you've never ceded that territory.
Let's go back a little further to the Indian Act of 1876, which combined numerous pre-existing colonial policies aimed at eradicating Indigenous cultures and governments. The Act was designed to remove Indigenous people from the land, put them on reserves, replace their governments with the dependent band council model, and to assimilate them into Canada. All of this was done to facilitate colonial settlement and resource extraction. In the 1880s, the Act was amended to criminalize all involvement in traditional governance systems through the banning of the potlatch. All manners of ceremonial and cultural life were also made criminal, such as the Sundance in the Plains. Any form of gathering not sanctioned by Canada was essentially forced underground. And all of this was enforced by the RCMP, who helped oversee Canada's assimilatory policies. Hereditary governments in the Northwest did not sit idly during this time and quickly contested these policies within Canadian courts. As a result of persistent political organizing and efforts to redress issues of territory and authority, the Indian Act was amended again in 1927, making it illegal for Indigenous peoples to raise legal funds, hire lawyers, or seek legal counsel regarding land claims or Aboriginal title. Keep in mind, all of this took place in conjunction with the Indian residential schools, deadly foreign disease epidemics, and intense discrimination from settlers and their governments. The worst aspects of these policies would not be removed until 1951, yet the Indian Act still remains to this day. In 1997, over 100 years after the introduction of the Indian Act, and despite the best efforts of British Columbia and Canada to state the contrary, the highest court in Canada determined that Wet'suwet'en title to their lands had never been extinguished by British Columbia, and that the hereditary chiefs are the rightful decision makers on their respective territories.
The province is the one that needs to prove that how this is their jurisdiction.
Obviously, it's not an ideal situation, but we have to remember that 100 years ago, if the government decided, well, the railway's going here, nobody was consulted. The government could just do this. That is not the way we do things anymore. It's not the way we should do things anymore. But at the same time, we're also a country of the rule of law, and when the courts weigh in and say, that we need to get things done and we need to move forward, we also have to abide by that.
Shut up and sit down.
On January 7th, 2019, while enforcing an injunction issued by the British Columbia Supreme Court, RCMP personnel, militarized with assault rifles and body armor, invaded the territory of the Gitumden, one of the 5 clans in support of the Unistoten. Behind a barricade constructed from 2x4s and barbed wire, unarmed Wet'suwet'en people demanded that the approaching RCMP receive the consent of the hereditary chiefs before entering their territory. Their pleas were ignored as RCMP personnel started dismantling the barricade, climbing over top, and forcibly arresting anyone attempting to maintain the checkpoint set by the Gitumden. All the while, painful screams could be heard from people who had strategically placed their arms within the barricade, hoping to dissuade such a forceful entry. It was later revealed that the RCMP had received instructions to use as much violence as necessary to dismantle the blockades. The same report unveiled by The Guardian also revealed that the RCMP were prepared to shoot Wet'suwet'en peoples during their raid at Gitumden checkpoint.
Shut up and sit down.
What happened next? After seeing the violence of the raid firsthand, the Unistoten hereditary chiefs decided to allow the entry of coastal Gaslinc under duress. While the media reported that an agreement was finally reached, that was referring to the forced entry of the RCMP and CGL onto Unistoten territories, which the hereditary chiefs allowed, solely in order to ensure the safety of their people. The hereditary chiefs made it clear afterwards that they by no means had given their consent to the pipeline project. They would go on to contest it in other ways, such as through the Supreme Court of British Columbia, where the injunction was to be eventually revisited. Everything they had stood for, on the land they had protected for thousands of years, was on the line. Meanwhile, coastal Gaslinc began their work on Unistoten territory.
who did the AIA? Who did the archaeological investigation assessment to say, okay, we're going to build on top of that, and it's like putting a roadway on top of a grave site. In 2014, when I first brought this up with CGL, I said, your right-of-way can't go close to this trailway because there's people in there.
Today, Premier John Horgan insisted the pipeline meets all the government standards.
We recognize the right of individuals to protest. We recognize the rights of those across the country who wanted to voice their concerns about this project.
Did you notice that he never recognized the rights of the Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs as affirmed by Wet'suwet'en, Canadian, and international law?
However, it has been my view that LNG Canada has shown they understand the importance of consultation and meaningful reconciliation with First Nations.
On the subject of reconciliation, let's look at some more examples. They bulldozed registered trap lines and ancient trails, destroyed archaeological sites, and disregarded the concerns of the people they were supposed to be reconciling with. While an agreement was in place, the tension remained, as industry workers and police continued to occupy Wet'suwet'en land.
That's why they have signed agreements with every First Nation along the pipeline corridor.
Just a friendly reminder, by First Nations, he's mainly referring to band councils. So where does that leave us now? On December 31st, Justice Marguerite Church of the Supreme Court of British Columbia ruled that the permits of coastal Gaslinc trumped Wet'suwet'en law. The hereditary chiefs of the Wet'suwet'en had this to say in response. In this time of reconciliation, with BC being the first province to legislate UNDRIP, this ruling by a court in BC against Indigenous rights and recognition truly proves that industry, not the people, can control the province and its laws. Ultimately, we are our own government, and we decide who comes onto our territory. We are the hereditary chiefs. British Columbia and Canada only have assumed and presumed authority on our lands. Following the ruling, CGL was respectfully evicted from Unistoten territories.
So this is a letter that's signed from all the head hereditary chiefs from the Wet'suwet'en. That's it in our feast hall. We held a feast hall saying that we did not approve of these projects and we were ignored. And they ignored our decision and go talk to other people to try to push their projects on. And the Wet'suwet'en chiefs went to Delgamuukw-Gisdewa court case, spent millions of dollars to prove these were our lands. And they proved it in that courts. So what did they do? They changed the court's legislation to make us look like criminals on our own land. We do this for your kids, your grandkids. We don't have much left. They took all our land already. And my clan only has 2 territories. This is one of them. And we use it culturally. We hunt, we do our medicines, we pick our berries. We teach our kids. So this has been sent to David Pfeiffer. So this is a letter, and the chiefs are now with their blankets down 39, and they're going to block that road. And we're asking you guys to peacefully leave this, vacate this, because it's an eviction notice from the Wet'suwet'en chiefs.
With the blockade back in place, and with CGL off the land, all eyes should be back on Unistoten, and even more so on the British Columbian government and its police force. In the end, Canada, British Columbia, the RCMP, and Coastal GasLink have left them little choice but to stand up for their rights and livelihoods. The Unistoten are doing so peacefully, but the real danger comes from the RCMP escalating this conflict like they did on January 7th of last year. And finally, I will ask Canadians this question. Is this really the legacy you want to continue for future generations? Since the original release of this mini-documentary on January 6, 2020, the second raid on Wet'suwet'en territory has taken place, directly in response to the Wet'suwet'en upholding their laws and peacefully reoccupying their territories. As a result, solidarity actions erupted throughout Canada and the world.
You did this! You did this! You shut down Canada! This is what it looks like! Now go!
And unprecedented negotiations regarding rights and title had finally commenced between the Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs, Canada, and British Columbia. We have also witnessed the rise of a global pandemic and a powerful response to police violence and systematic racism in the South. Coastal Gaslinc and the Royal Canadian Mounted Police continue to occupy and degrade Wet'suwet'en lands without consent and in violation of Wet'suwet'en law. Still, the story unfolds. To be continued in Colonialism in Canada, Criminalizing Wet'suwet'en Law.